The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi have served as its guardians, interpreting its will and maintaining peace. But what happens when something arrives that exists entirely outside the Force's reach, a being of such raw power that even the wisest masters cannot sense his intentions or predict his path? The battle above Earth's orbit had been catastrophic. Superman fought desperately against Darkseid's parademon army, protecting his world from annihilation. Then, Darkseid's Omega Beam struck an experimental LexCorp satellite at the precise moment Superman intercepted them. The resulting explosion tore reality itself, ripping open a dimensional wound that swallowed the Kryptonian whole. He felt his cells scream as they were pulled through impossible geometries, through the space between universes, until finally, he crashed through Coruscant's upper atmosphere like a falling star. The impact crater in Monument Plaza shattered permacrete and sent terrified citizens fleeing. Smoke rose from the epicenter as Republic security speeders rushed toward the scene. From the wreckage, a figure in blue and red emerged, cape torn and smoking but otherwise unharmed. Clark Kent rose to his feet, disoriented, his superhearing immediately overwhelmed by the cacophony of trillions of voices across the city planet. "Where am I?" he whispered, then winced as his own voice echoed with painful clarity. Towering structures stretched beyond sight in every direction. Speeders and air traffic filled the sky in organized chaos. Alien species he'd never encountered walked the streets, and above it all, dominating the skyline, a massive temple with 5 distinctive spires reaching toward the stars. At that same moment, within the Jedi Temple's meditation chambers, Master Yoda's eyes snapped open. Around the galaxy, Force-sensitive beings felt a disturbance, not in the Force itself, but rather its complete absence surrounding a point of immense power. It was like a void had suddenly appeared on Coruscant, a blind spot in their mystical perception. "Something has arrived," Yoda said quietly. "But what it is, the Force cannot tell me." Republic security surrounded Superman within minutes, weapons trained on him. He raised his hands peacefully, his X-ray vision already revealing they carried energy weapons, not bullets. "I don't want trouble. I'm not sure how I got here, but I mean no harm." "Identify yourself," the security captain demanded. "What species are you? What's your homeworld?" Before Clark could answer, a transport descended from above. 6 figures emerged. Jedi, Clark realized, recognizing their ceremonial robes and the cylindrical weapons at their belts. He'd read about samurai in Earth's history. These warriors carried themselves with similar discipline. The lead Jedi, a Keldor wearing a breathing mask, stepped forward. "I am Plo Koon of the Jedi Order. We sensed your arrival." He paused, studying Superman with visible confusion. "Yet I cannot sense you in the Force. You are empty. A void where a living being should shine." Clark's mind raced. Force? Living beings should shine? He was clearly in a universe with very different rules than his own. "My name is Clark Kent. I'm from Earth, though I suspect a very different Earth than any you might know. I was in the middle of a battle when something pulled me through. I don't even know how to describe it. A rip in space." "A dimensional anomaly," Plo Koon said thoughtfully. "Rare but not impossible. You will need to come with us. The Council will want to meet you." It wasn't a request, but Clark nodded anyway. He needed answers, and these Jedi seemed like the closest thing to heroes this place had. As he followed them toward their transport, he noticed the citizens staring at him with a mixture of fear and fascination. He was used to that reaction, but here it felt different. Here, he truly was an alien. The flight to the Jedi Temple gave Clark time to observe this strange new world. Coruscant stretched endlessly in every direction, one massive city covering the entire planet. His telescopic vision showed him glimpses of poverty in the lower levels, stark contrast to the gleaming upper districts. The architecture suggested an ancient civilization with advanced technology, towers that would put Metropolis to shame, energy shields, and vessels that seemed to defy conventional physics. "How long have your people been spacefaring?" he asked. "Humans have traveled the stars for over 25,000 years," Plo Koon replied. Though we are but one of millions of species in the Galactic Republic. 25,000 years. Clark felt vertigo that had nothing to do with altitude. Whatever universe he'd landed in, it was far older and more developed than his own. The Jedi Temple loomed before them, impossibly massive. As they approached, Clark's superhearing picked up the sounds within. Thousands of voices, the hum of meditation, the clash of training sabers. This was more than a headquarters. It was a living monastery, a fortress of peace in the heart of a civilization. But beneath those sounds, he heard something else. Whispers in corridors, quiet conversations about war, about battlefronts across the galaxy, about Jedi dying far from home. These peacekeepers were warriors now, and they were tired. The Jedi Council chamber occupied the temple's highest spire, a circular room with vast windows offering panoramic views of Coruscant's endless cityscape. 12 chairs arranged in a circle, though only 9 were occupied, a detail that spoke volumes about the ongoing war's toll. Clark stood at the chamber's center, acutely aware of the scrutiny from every direction. Master Yoda sat in his council chair, ancient eyes studying the Kryptonian with an intensity that suggested he saw more than others. Mace Windu's expression remained carefully neutral, while Obi-Wan Kenobi regarded him with barely concealed curiosity. Clark Kent, you say your name is, Yoda began, his unusual syntax taking Clark a moment to process. From Earth you come, yet Earth in our galaxy we know not. I believe I'm from another universe entirely, Clark explained. In my reality, Earth is relatively isolated. We've barely begun exploring our own solar system, nothing like this. He gestured toward the windows, encompassing the planet-wide city beyond. You possess no midi-chlorians, Mace Windu stated flatly. We cannot sense you in the Force at all. It's as if you exist outside the natural order of life itself. Clark felt a chill at those words. I'm alive, I assure you. I can hear your heartbeats, see the blood flowing through your veins. I'm as real as you are. Yet the Force does not touch you, Ki-Adi-Mundi observed. This is unprecedented. Tell us of your abilities, Obi-Wan requested, his tone more diplomatic. Your arrival created significant destruction, yet you emerged unharmed. And Plo Koon reports you seemed unaffected by the fall from our transport's altitude. Clark considered how much to reveal. These people clearly had power of their own, this Force they kept mentioning. But would they see him as a threat? Still, honesty had always been his policy. I'm not human, though I look like one. My home planet was called Krypton. When it was destroyed, my parents sent me to Earth in an escape pod. Earth's yellow sun grants my cells abilities beyond normal beings. I have significant strength, durability, enhanced senses, and I can fly. Destroyed? Shak Ti leaned forward. Your entire world? The sympathy in her voice was genuine, and Clark felt the familiar ache in his chest. Yes. I'm the last of my kind, as far as I know. Yoda's ears lowered slightly. Pain in your words, I sense. Though the Force reaches you not, your suffering is clear. The last of his kind, yet possessing godlike power, Mace Windu said, his tone cautious. Master Yoda, this being could level this temple if he chose. We've only his word regarding his intentions. I would never, Clark started, but Windu raised a hand. I do not accuse. I observe. We are at war, Master Kent. The Separatist forces grow bolder each day. Our order has lost dozens of Jedi in recent months. Trust is a luxury we can ill afford. War. Clark's enhanced hearing had caught rumors in the temple hallways, but hearing it confirmed was different. What kind of war? A civil war, Obi-Wan explained. Thousands of star systems have seceded from the Republic, led by Count Dooku and his Separatist alliance. They field massive droid armies against our clone troopers. The Jedi serve as generals, trying to hold the Republic together. Clone troopers. The phrase hit Clark like a physical blow. You're using clones? Created specifically to fight? They were commissioned before the war, Ki-Adi-Mundi said defensively. A gift, discovered just when we needed them most. A gift, Clark repeated, unable to keep the skepticism from his voice. Living beings created for the sole purpose of warfare. That doesn't trouble you? The council chamber fell silent. Several Jedi shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The clones serve with honor, Mace Windu said firmly. They are treated well, and they fight for a cause they believe in. Do they have a choice? Another uncomfortable silence. Obi-Wan finally spoke, his voice measured. Master Kent, I understand how this must sound to an outsider. But the alternative is allowing the Separatists to tear apart a republic that has maintained peace for 1,000 years. Sometimes there are no perfect choices. Clark wanted to argue further, but he recognized the weariness in Obi-Wan's eyes. These weren't villains, they were people trying to hold civilization together, making impossible choices in an impossible situation. He knew that feeling all too well. I apologize, Clark said. I'm a stranger here, and I have no right to judge your circumstances. Where I come from, every life is precious. The idea of creating sentient beings specifically to fight and die. He trailed off, shaking his head. Your compassion speaks well of you, Yoda said gently. But right you are, in questioning. Troubled by the clone's existence, many Jedi are. Yet ends this war, we must, before more innocents suffer. Which brings us to the crucial question, Mace Windu said, fixing Clark with an intense stare. What do you intend to do while you're here? Will you seek a way home? Will you involve yourself in our affairs? We need to know where you stand. Clark looked around the circle of faces, seeing hope in some, suspicion in others. Through the windows behind them, Coruscant sprawled endlessly. Trillions of lives going about their day, unaware that a displaced Kryptonian stood in the temple deciding their fate. I stand for protecting innocent people, Clark said finally. I don't know how long I'll be here or if I can even get home. But while I'm in this galaxy, I can't ignore suffering. I won't. Protect the innocent you wish to, Yoda said, a small smile crossing his ancient features. A Jedi's purpose, that is. Perhaps the Force brought you here for a reason, even if touch you, it does not. Or perhaps he's a weapon sent by Dooku to infiltrate the temple, Mace Windu countered. Master Yoda, I respect your instincts, but we cannot simply accept. An alarm shattered the discussion. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber, as a holographic display materialized at the room's center. A Republic officer appeared, his face pale with urgency. Masters, we have a situation. A Separatist fleet just emerged from hyperspace. They're attacking the orbital shipyards, and they're heading for the temple. The council chamber erupted into coordinated chaos. Jedi Knights moved with practiced efficiency, activating communications, coordinating defenses, preparing for battle. Through the massive windows, Clark could already see explosions blooming in the upper atmosphere as Republic and Separatist forces clashed. How did they get past the planetary defense grid? Obi-Wan demanded, studying the tactical display. They didn't come through the normal approach vectors, the Republic officer explained, his holographic form flickering. Micro-jumps from the system's edge, sir. By the time sensors detected them, they were already past the outer defenses. Mace Windu's jaw tightened. This is a coordinated strike. They're targeting the temple specifically. His eyes flicked to Clark. Convenient timing. I had nothing to do with this, Clark said firmly. I didn't even know I'd be here until an hour ago. Master Windu, regardless of suspicions, we need every capable defender, Shakti interjected. She gestured toward the windows, where Clark's telescopic vision could now make out the descending Separatist vessels, massive ships bristling with weapons, escorted by smaller fighters. If this being truly possesses the power he claims, we would be fools not to accept his help. Yoda tapped his Geimer stick against the floor. Right, Master Tai is. Time for debate we do not have. Clark Kent, if protect the innocent you wish, now is your chance to prove it. Clark was already moving toward the windows. How many people are in this temple? Approximately 10,000, Plo Koon answered. Jedi, younglings, support staff, and temple guards. Younglings, children. Clark's jaw set with determination. Then that's 10,000 people I'm not letting die today. He didn't wait for permission or further debate. His fist punched through the reinforced transparasteel window as if it were paper, and then he was flying, cape streaming behind him as he shot toward the descending Separatist ships. The wind roared past him as he accelerated. His first target was obvious: a massive transport vessel descending toward the temple's main entrance, its bay doors opening to disgorge what looked like hundreds of combat droids. Clark hit the ship's underside at full speed. The impact reverberated across the sky like thunder. The transport lurched upward, its descent halted completely by the collision. Inside, Clark could hear the screeching of metal and the electronic confusion of droids tumbling from their deployment positions. He grabbed the vessel's hull and flew upward, lifting the entire ship away from the temple. "What in the name?" The tactical officer's voice came through comms across the Jedi Temple. "Sir, scanners are showing a single humanoid contact is lifting the transport ship." Back in the council chamber, the Jedi watched through the broken window in stunned silence as Superman carried the Separatist vessel thousands of meters into the air. Mace Windu's previous skepticism warred visibly with the evidence before his eyes. Clark felt his strength flowing through him, the Coruscant sun, while slightly different in its radiation signature, still providing ample power. The ship was heavy, far heavier than anything on Earth, but manageable. He angled upward, accelerating until he was high enough that dropping it would endanger no one below, then hurled the vessel toward the upper atmosphere. It tumbled away, engines screaming in protest, while Clark turned his attention to the fighter craft now swarming toward him. These were vulture droids, the tactical part of his mind supplied from the briefings he'd overheard in the temple, Separatist automated fighters with surprising agility. The first wave opened fire. Blue energy bolts, blaster fire, he'd learned it was called, streaked toward him. Clark didn't dodge. He simply hovered there, letting the shots impact his chest, his arms, his face. They felt like warm rain, completely harmless against his Kryptonian physiology. The vulture droids seemed to pause in confusion, their programming struggling to process a target that ignored direct hits. Clark took advantage of their hesitation, flying directly into their formation. He grabbed the nearest droid and crumpled it like aluminum foil, then hurled the wreckage into two more fighters. They exploded in satisfying fireballs. "By the Force," Obi-Wan breathed, watching from the temple. "He's not just strong, he's completely invulnerable to blaster fire." More Separatist ships were descending now, massive frigates that began bombardment of the temple's shields. Energy cannons lit up the sky, hammering against the temple's defensive barriers. Clark could see the shields flickering under the assault, their blue glow dimming with each hit. He needed to stop those cannons. Clark flew toward the nearest frigate at supersonic speed, the sonic boom rattling windows across the entire district. He crashed through the ship's hull like it was cardboard, emerging in what appeared to be a command center. Battle droids spun toward him, weapons raised, but Clark moved faster than their targeting systems could track. In 3 seconds, he'd disabled every droid in the room, reducing them to sparking scrap with carefully controlled strength. "Cease fire on the temple," he ordered, though he knew no organic beings were present to obey. These ships were automated, controlled by droid intelligence. He'd have to do this the hard way. His heat vision activated, twin beams of concentrated energy that cut through the ship's weapon systems like surgical lasers. He carved through targeting computers, power conduits, and cannon barrels with precision, ensuring the ship was completely disarmed without killing anyone. Because even if droids weren't organic, Clark's code against killing applied to all sentient beings. 1 frigate disarmed, 7 more to go. He burst from the disabled ship and flew toward the next, but something unexpected happened. From one of the larger vessels, a Providence-class destroyer hanging back from the main assault, a new weapon emerged. It was massive, crystal-based, and as it charged, Clark's superhearing detected a frequency that made his cells uncomfortable for the first time since arriving in this galaxy. "Interesting," a cultured voice came through speakers across the battlefield. "The Jedi's new pet shows impressive resilience. Let's test if he can withstand kyber-accelerated plasma." The weapon fired. Clark barely had time to register the attack before it hit him, not blaster fire, but something different. Concentrated energy wrapped in a frequency that his Kryptonian cells found actively hostile. He grunted in pain, the first pain he'd felt since arriving, and dropped several hundred meters before recovering. "There we are," the voice continued, satisfaction evident. "Even monsters can bleed. Continue bombardment. Kill the Jedi and their invulnerable friend." Down in the temple, Mace Windu watched Clark fall, then catch himself. He can be hurt, the Jedi Master observed. Whatever that weapon was, it affected him. Kyber crystal technology, Ki-Adi-Mundi said grimly. The Separatists have been developing new weapons. If they found something that can harm him, then he needs support, Anakin Skywalker said, appearing at the chamber entrance with his Padawan Ahsoka Tano at his side. Masters, with respect, we can't just watch. He's buying us time to get the younglings to safety, but he's alone up there. Yoda nodded slowly. Right, young Skywalker is. To battle, we must go. But careful we must be. Fighting alongside one we cannot sense, coordination will be difficult. Clark recovered from the Kyber weapon's blast, anger replacing his usual calm. They just tried to kill him with intent, which meant gloves were off. He flew toward the Providence destroyer at maximum speed, vision locked on the massive Kyber cannon. If they wanted to test a Kryptonian's limits, they were about to get a comprehensive education. Behind him, Jedi starfighters launched from the temple hangar, rushing to join a battle that was rapidly becoming a defining moment in the Clone Wars. The day the Separatists discovered that some enemies couldn't be defeated with conventional warfare, and the day the Jedi realized their newest ally was as terrifying as he was heroic. The war had just changed. They simply didn't know how much yet. The Providence-class destroyer loomed before Superman like a mechanical leviathan, its Kyber cannon already charging for another shot. Clark didn't give it the chance. He accelerated to full speed, becoming a red and blue blur that crossed the distance in less than a second. His fist impacted the cannon's barrel with the force of a meteorite strike. The entire weapon assembly crumpled inward, Kyber crystals shattering and releasing their stored energy in a cascading explosion that ripped through the destroyer's forward section. Clark flew through the blast, emerging on the other side covered in soot but unharmed. Impossible! The voice from earlier, cultured, aristocratic, now carried an edge of genuine concern. All ships, concentrate fire on the Kryptonian. Forget the temple. Eliminate him first. 8 Separatist vessels turned their weapons toward Superman. The sky lit up with thousands of blaster bolts converging on a single point. Clark hovered in the center of the firestorm, cape whipping around him, completely motionless as the energy washed over him harmlessly. Your weapons don't work, Clark called out, his voice carrying across the open channels. Stand down. I don't want to destroy your ships, but I will protect these people. The response was immediate. A barrage of missiles launched from multiple vectors. Clark sighed, then moved. His super speed allowed him to intercept each missile mid-flight, redirecting them away from the temple and into empty sky where they detonated harmlessly. The entire intercept sequence took 4 seconds. Below, Anakin Skywalker's fighter weaved through the chaos, Ahsoka on his wing. Did you see that? Ahsoka's voice crackled over comms. He just stopped 20 missiles. I saw it, Anakin replied, awe evident in his tone. Master Obi-Wan, I think we might be unnecessary up here. Don't be so sure, Anakin, Obi-Wan's calm voice responded. Look at the tactical display. 3 more Providence destroyers just dropped out of hyperspace. This isn't a raid. It's a full invasion attempt. Clark's enhanced vision confirmed it. New contacts were appearing at the system's edge, and his super hearing picked up encrypted transmissions coordinating a multi-pronged assault. This wasn't just about destroying the temple. The Separatists were trying to take Coruscant itself. A massive explosion suddenly bloomed near one of the Republic orbital platforms. Clark's X-ray vision penetrated the debris field and his heart sank. He could see bodies, clone troopers, floating in the wreckage, dead or dying because he'd been focused on the temple while the real battle raged across multiple fronts. He couldn't be everywhere at once. Jedi fighters, I need coordination, Clark transmitted on the open channel. There are too many targets. I can handle the capital ships, but those smaller fighters are slipping past me. Copy that, Obi-Wan responded immediately. All wings, form up on me. We'll screen the Kryptonian while he deals with the heavy vessels. Anakin, take your squadron and protect the civilian evacuation routes. What about him? Anakin asked. Can we trust him? There was a pause before Obi-Wan answered, and Clark could imagine the Jedi Master's slight smile. He just saved the temple and everyone in it. I think we can extend some trust. Besides, I don't sense deception from him. I don't sense anything from him, which is oddly reassuring. Clark flew toward the nearest Providence destroyer. But this time he approached strategically. His X-ray vision scanned the vessel's interior, identifying the reactor core, the command bridge, and, most importantly, any organic life signs. The ship was crewed entirely by droids. That simplified things. He punched through the hull near the reactor, then used his heat vision to surgically disable the power systems. The entire ship went dark, drifting helplessly. Non-lethal, effective, and quick. He could do this. One by one, Superman methodically disabled the Separatist capital ships. His speed and invulnerability made him impossible to stop, and his restraint prevented mass destruction. Within 10 minutes, 7 Providence destroyers hung dead in orbit, their droid crews helpless. But the cost was mounting. Clone trooper casualties were climbing. Civilian transports were being targeted. And in the chaos, Clark heard something that made his blood run cold. A distress call from the lower levels of Coruscant, where the fighting had somehow spread. Millions of civilians in danger. "I have to go," Clark transmitted to the Jedi fighters. "The lower levels." "We'll handle orbit," Mace Windu's voice cut in, his tone having shifted from suspicion to grim respect. "Go. Save who you can." Clark descended into Coruscant's lower levels like a falling angel, following the distress signals and the sounds of screaming. The contrast between the gleaming upper city and these depths was staggering. Where above there was light and prosperity, here there was darkness, poverty, and now terror as Separatist infiltration droids hunted civilians. He found the first group of survivors huddled in an abandoned factory. A dozen commando droids had them cornered, weapons raised for execution. Clark didn't announce himself. He simply appeared, moving faster than the droids could process, and reduced them to scrap metal in seconds. "You're safe now," he told the terrified families, his voice gentle despite the violence he'd just committed. "Stay here. I'll make sure no more droids reach this sector." An elderly Twi'lek woman stared at him with wide eyes. "What are you?" "Someone who helps," Clark said simply, then flew back into the darkness. For the next hour, Superman became a legend in Coruscant's forgotten depths. He saved hundreds of civilians, disabled dozens of droid kill teams, and pulled survivors from collapsed structures. His heat vision sealed gas leaks, his freeze breath extinguished fires, and his strength cleared debris that would have trapped people for days. But he also saw things that troubled him deeply. The poverty, the desperation, the complete disconnect between these levels, and the gleaming prosperity above. This republic wasn't as perfect as the Jedi Council's chambers suggested. Meanwhile, in orbit, the battle had shifted. With Superman handling the Separatist capital ships, the Jedi and clone forces had secured air superiority. The remaining enemy vessels were retreating to hyperspace, recognizing a losing battle. On the Providence destroyer's bridge, now drifting but still minimally functional, a holographic figure materialized. Count Dooku's elegant features showed no concern despite the tactical disaster, only measured interest. "Tell me about this Kryptonian," he commanded the droid captain. "Invulnerable to all standard weapons, Lord Tyrannus. Strength exceeding Class 5 load ratings. Flight capability without propulsion systems. Energy projection from optical sensors. Strategic analysis suggests no conventional victory possible." "Interesting," Dooku mused, stroking his beard. "And the Jedi can sense nothing from him?" "Correct. He exists outside the Force entirely. Then he represents a variable my master did not account for." Dooku's expression became thoughtful. "But every being has weaknesses. Even gods can fall. Continue surveillance. I want complete data on this Superman." The hologram flickered out, leaving the droids to their retreat. But in a dark corner of the galaxy, Darth Sidious was already adjusting his grand design, calculating how this Kryptonian anomaly could be turned, controlled, or destroyed. Back at the Jedi Temple, Clark returned to find the Council waiting in the damaged chamber. Through the broken window, he could see the city beginning to recover. Emergency services worked frantically. The casualties had been significant but far less than they could have been. "Report from the lower levels is remarkable," Obi-Wan said, reviewing a datapad. "Estimates suggest you personally saved over 3,000 civilians, Master Kent. The people down there are calling you the guardian from the sky. I did what anyone would do, Clark replied. Though exhaustion tugged at him for the first time since arriving, he'd expended enormous energy, and while Coruscant's sun was recharging him, he could feel the difference from Earth's solar radiation. Adaptation would take time. Not anyone could do what you did, Mace Windu said, and there was no suspicion left in his voice, only respect tinged with concern. You turned the tide of an entire battle single-handedly. The Separatists came with enough force to level this temple. You stopped them. We stopped them, Clark corrected. Your fighters protected civilians while I dealt with the capital ships. It was teamwork. Yoda's eyes crinkled with something approaching amusement. Humble, this one is. Powerful beyond measure, yet credit he shares. Curious, most curious. Master Yoda, we need to discuss the implications, Ki-Adi-Mundi interjected. If the Separatists know about Superman, they'll develop countermeasures. That kyber weapon hurt him. They'll refine it. Let them try, Anakin said, entering the chamber with barely contained enthusiasm. Did you see what he did up there? He's exactly what we need to end this war. Is he? Mace Windu's question hung heavy in the air. Or have we simply introduced a new piece to an already complex board? Superman, the Separatists will be studying you now, developing weapons, and Count Dooku is not a fool. He'll seek ways to use your presence against us. Clark met Windu's gaze steadily. Then we make sure I'm not the weapon he thinks I am. Master Windu, I understand your caution. I'm an unknown variable in your war, but I meant what I said. I protect innocent people. That's not negotiable. The council session extended late into the Coruscant night. Clark sat in a guest chamber, recovering his strength while listening to the Jedi debate his presence. His super hearing made privacy impossible, though he tried to respect their space by focusing elsewhere. The question isn't whether he's powerful, Obi-Wan was saying. It's whether his philosophy aligns with our war effort. He questioned our use of clones immediately. What happens when he questions other difficult decisions we've made? Good perhaps that someone questions, Yoda replied softly. Lost our way the Jedi may have. Warriors we have become, when peacekeepers we should be. Master Yoda, we don't have the luxury of philosophy right now, Mace Windu countered. The Separatists are destroying Republic worlds. If we don't fight, millions die. And if we fight, millions die anyway, Shakti observed. The Clone Wars consume everything. Perhaps Superman's outsider perspective is what we need. Clark stopped listening, guilt gnawing at him. He was eavesdropping on people who'd shown him hospitality. Instead, he focused on the city beyond, the hum of life, the whispered conversations, the sounds of families reuniting after the battle. This galaxy was broken in ways he didn't fully understand yet, but it was still full of people worth protecting. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Anakin Skywalker entered without waiting for permission, a trait that reminded Clark of younger heroes he'd mentored back home. The Council wants you to stay at the temple, Anakin said without preamble. Master Windu thinks you're too dangerous to roam freely. Master Yoda thinks you need guidance. Obi-Wan thinks you should be given freedom to choose. They're still arguing. And what do you think? Clark asked. Anakin sat down uninvited, studying Superman with unconcealed fascination. I think you're the most powerful being I've ever encountered, and I've met Jedi Masters who can move mountains with the Force. But power doesn't scare me. Intention does. So what do you intend, Superman? The name caught Clark off guard. Superman? That's what the civilians are calling you. The Guardian from the Sky, the Man of Steel, Superman. It's catchy. Anakin grinned, though his eyes remained serious. You could reshape this war. End it tomorrow if you wanted. Fly to the Separatist capital and disable their entire military infrastructure. So why didn't you? Because that's not how you build peace, Clark said quietly. I learned that lesson the hard way. You can't force people to stop fighting. You can only protect them while they figure out why they're fighting and whether it's worth the cost. Spoken like a Jedi, Anakin said, though something bitter edged his tone. Or like someone who's never been responsible for an army dying because you hesitated. Clark heard the pain beneath Anakin's words, the guilt of command. You've lost people. Clones under my command. Good men who trusted me to bring them home. Anakin's hands clenched. The council says they're soldiers, that losses are acceptable, but every death weighs on me. You questioned whether they have a choice. They don't really. They were made for war, but that doesn't make their deaths matter less. No, Clark agreed softly. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a moment. Two warriors from different worlds sharing the weight of protecting others. Finally, Anakin spoke again, voice lower. The council doesn't trust easily. Can't blame them. We're at war, and trust gets people killed. But I trust you. I felt your intention up there. You held back even when it would have been easier to just destroy everything. That takes more strength than raw power. Thank you, Clark said, genuinely touched. That means something. Don't thank me yet. Anakin stood, heading for the door. Because tomorrow, Master Windu is going to test you. He wants to see if lightsabers can hurt you, if Force abilities can affect you, if you're as invincible as you seem. And if you're not. He paused at the threshold. If you're not, the Council will treat you like a powerful asset that needs protecting. They'll limit what you can do, where you can go, just warning you. After Anakin left, Clark returned to the window, staring out at Coruscant's endless lights. Testing tomorrow. He understood the logic. They needed to know his limitations. But the idea of fighting Jedi, even in a controlled environment, made him uncomfortable. These weren't villains. They were protectors like him, trying to hold civilization together in impossible circumstances. But Anakin was right about one thing. Clark could end this war tomorrow if he chose violence. Fly to wherever Count Dooku commanded from and dismantle their entire military infrastructure. It would be easy, efficient, and completely wrong. Because wars didn't end with force. They ended when people chose peace, when the reasons for fighting became less important than the desire to stop. Superman could be a shield. But he couldn't be a sword. Not without becoming something he'd sworn never to be. Tomorrow he'd face the Jedi's test. And after that, he'd have to decide what kind of guardian this galaxy needed, and whether he could be that guardian without compromising everything he stood for. The city hummed below, full of life and conflict, hope and despair. Just like home, Clark thought. Just like every world that needed heroes. He'd figure it out. He always did. The Jedi Temple training grounds occupied a vast internal courtyard, shielded from the city's bustle by ancient stone walls. Dawnlight filtered through the opening above as Clark stood at the center, surrounded by 5 of the Order's finest warriors. Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Kit Fisto, Shaak Ti, and Plo Koon formed a loose circle around him, lightsabers ignited and humming. This is not an attack, Mace Windu clarified, his purple blade casting strange shadows across his face. We need to understand your capabilities and limitations, for your protection as much as ours. I understand, Clark replied, though his posture remained relaxed. Though I should warn you, I've sparred with some of the strongest beings in my universe. I know how to hold back. As do we, Obi-Wan said with a slight smile. Shall we begin? They moved as one. A coordinated assault that spoke to decades of training together. Mace Windu came high, Obi-Wan low, while Kit Fisto flanked from the left with fluid, unpredictable strikes. Clark didn't move. He simply stood there as 3 lightsaber blades struck him simultaneously, chest, shoulder, and abdomen. The lightsabers sparked against his skin. The plasma blades, hot enough to cut through blast doors, left not even a mark on Kryptonian flesh. The Jedi immediately disengaged, shock evident on their faces. Impossible, Kit Fisto breathed. Lightsabers cut through everything. Not everything, Clark said gently. I'm sorry if that's disappointing. Disappointing isn't the word I'd use, Mace Windu muttered, deactivating his blade. Terrifying is more accurate. You're completely immune to our primary weapon. Try the Force, Shaak Ti suggested. Perhaps what cannot be cut can still be moved. The 5 Jedi extended their hands, and Clark felt something. Not pressure exactly, but an attempt at pressure. Like invisible hands trying to push against him, but finding no purchase. The Force, he realized, simply didn't affect him the way it affected everything else in this universe. He's like a stone in a river, Plo Koon observed. The Force flows around him, but cannot touch him. Which means force push, force pull, even Master Yoda's most powerful techniques. None of it would work, Obi-Wan said, stroking his beard thoughtfully. He's a complete blind spot in our abilities. Not completely, Clark interjected. I can still be affected by things you manipulate with the Force. If you threw that boulder at me. He pointed to a training obstacle. I'd feel the impact of the boulder, even if I couldn't feel your force push directly. Small comfort, Mace Windu said dryly. But noted. What about your weaknesses? That kyber weapon hurt you yesterday. Clark hesitated. Revealing weakness went against every survival instinct. But these people needed to know if they were going to work together. I draw power from solar radiation. Yellow sun specifically, though I'm adapting to your sun's signature. Certain radiation frequencies interfere with that process. The kyber weapon emitted something my cells found hostile. Kyber crystals are attuned to the Force, Shakti explained. Perhaps the energy they channel, the living Force itself, creates a frequency incompatible with your physiology. It's possible, Clark admitted. But it wasn't lethal, painful, disorienting. But I recovered quickly. The Separatists will refine it now that they know it works, Obi-Wan warned. They'll develop dedicated anti-Kryptonian weapons. Let them. Clark's voice carried quiet confidence. I've faced enemies with kryptonite, a substance from my homeworld that can kill me. I survived. Whatever they develop, I'll adapt. Mace Windu studied Superman with an expression that had shifted from suspicion to something approaching respect. You're not invincible. That's good, actually. Invincibility breeds arrogance. But you're close enough to invincible that you're a strategic asset we can't afford to lose, or have turned against us. I won't be turned, Clark said firmly. And I won't be controlled. I'll help you protect people. But I won't be a weapon aimed at your enemies just because you point me in a direction. That's what concerns me, Mace Windu admitted. Superman, this war is complex. Sometimes protecting Republic civilians means striking separatist targets. Sometimes it means making choices where innocent people die regardless of what we do. Can you make those choices? Clark met his gaze steadily. I've made them before. They never get easier. But I draw a line at killing when other options exist. If you need someone to assassinate separatist leaders or destroy civilian infrastructure, find someone else. The Jedi do not assassinate, Obi-Wan said quickly, though something flickered in his eyes. A memory, perhaps, of orders that came uncomfortably close. We're peacekeepers, not executioners. Yet we lead armies of clones bred for war, Plo Koon said quietly. We command star destroyers that rain fire on separatist worlds. We've become warriors regardless of what we call ourselves. An uncomfortable silence fell over the training ground. Clark could hear the truth in Plo Koon's words echoing in each Jedi's heartbeat. Acceleration in Mace Windu's steady rhythm, a skip in Obi-Wan's measured pulse. They knew. They all knew what they'd become. Then maybe it's time to remember what you should be, Clark said softly. I can handle the battles. I can stop invasions, disable war machines, save civilians. Let me be the warrior, so you can be peacekeepers again. It's not that simple, Mace Windu began. But Yoda's voice interrupted from the courtyard entrance. Perhaps simpler than we make it. It is. The ancient Jedi Master approached, leaning heavily on his gamer stick. Lost ourselves in this war we have. A reminder of our true purpose. Perhaps Superman is. Master Yoda, with respect, one being, no matter how powerful, cannot change the fundamental nature of this conflict, Mace Windu protested. No, Yoda agreed. But change how we approach it, he might. Test him in battle, we should. A real mission, not training exercises. Clark straightened. What kind of mission? A distress call we received. A Republic outpost on Ryloth, under Separatist siege. Obi-Wan pulled up a holographic display. Standard tactical response would be to send a full battalion with air support. But if Superman can break the siege alone... He shouldn't go alone, Anakin said, appearing from the shadows where he'd apparently been watching. Master. Let me accompany him, We'll work better as a team. Skywalker, you have other assignments, Mace Windu started, but Yoda raised a hand. Good idea young Skywalker has. Partner them, we should. Superman's power. Anakin's tactical knowledge. Effective combination. Mace Windu looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. Fine. Skywalker, take your fighter and escort Superman to Ryloth. Break the siege, evacuate the outpost, return immediately. This is reconnaissance of his capabilities, not a full military operation. Understood, Master. Anakin grinned at Clark. Hope you can keep up with a Jedi starfighter. Clark smiled back. I'll try. The hyperspace journey to Ryloth gave Clark his first real conversation with Anakin. The young Jedi's fighter flew alongside Superman, who discovered that flying in the vacuum of space felt surprisingly natural. His Kryptonian biology adapted effortlessly to the lack of atmosphere, and the radiation from nearby stars energized him even more than Coruscant's sun. So, on your Earth, are there other heroes like you? Anakin's voice came through the comm system Clark had been given, a small earpiece that worked remarkably like his Justice League communicator. A few, each with different abilities. Some are warriors, some are detectives, some are scientists. We work together when threats are too big for any one of us. Sounds like the Jedi Order, Anakin mused. Except we're all trained the same way, taught to use the same power. Sometimes I wonder if that's a weakness. We all think alike, fight alike. Diversity of thought is strength, Clark agreed. But so is unity of purpose. Your order has lasted 1,000 years, that's impressive. Yeah, but at what cost? Anakin's tone darkened. We give up attachments, families, love, all to serve the Order and the Republic. Sometimes I wonder if we've given up too much, if we've forgotten what we're actually fighting for. Clark heard pain beneath those words. You've lost someone. A long pause. My mother. She died while I was away serving the Order. By the time I got back, Anakin's voice caught. The Jedi way says I should let go of attachment, accept her death as part of the Force's will. But I can't. I won't. Grief isn't a weakness, Clark said quietly. And love isn't something you should have to give up to be a hero. The people I protect, I love them. That love makes me stronger, not weaker. Tell that to the Council, Anakin muttered. Then, more urgently, we're approaching Ryloth, dropping out of hyperspace in 3, 2... The stars stretched and snapped back into focus. Ryloth hung before them, a harsh desert world with stark mountains and deep valleys. But it wasn't the planet that caught Clark's attention. It was the battle raging in orbit. 3 Republic frigates were under assault by a full Separatist battle group. Vulture droids swarmed like insects while Tri-Fighter bombers strafed the Republic vessel's shields. And descending toward the planet's surface was a massive Subjugator-class heavy cruiser, its ion cannons charging. That's Grievous's flagship, Anakin said, tension sharp in his voice. Superman, the outpost is on the surface, but if that cruiser reaches firing position, it'll level the entire facility and everyone in it. Then I stop the cruiser, Clark said simply. Wait, we should coordinate with the Republic fleet. But Superman was already accelerating, leaving Anakin's fighter behind as he crossed the distance to the subjugator in seconds. The massive vessel dominated his vision, bristling with weapons and armor. Through his X-ray vision, Clark could see thousands of battle droids manning stations, and in the command center, a figure that was partially organic, partially cybernetic. General Grievous. Clark slammed into the cruiser's forward hull, and the entire ship shuddered from the impact. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as structural integrity warnings flashed across every terminal. What was that? Grievous's raspy mechanical voice demanded. Unknown impact, General, a tactical droid reported. Scanning. There's a humanoid life form on the hull. Single contact. It's punching through the armor plating. Impossible. Deploy boarding droids. Clark tore through the hull like tissue paper, emerging inside a droid hangar. Hundreds of battle droids turned toward him, weapons raised. He didn't give them time to fire. Moving at super speed, he dismantled the droids in waves, his controlled strength reducing them to scrap without causing explosive decompression that would endanger any organic crew. But there was organic crew. He could hear their heartbeats deeper in the ship. 4 beings. Kalish by their respiratory patterns, serving as Grievous's honor guard. Clark needed to be careful. Despite everything, he wouldn't kill. He carved through bulkheads, following the path to the bridge. Behind him, emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, containing the damage. The ship's systems were remarkably sophisticated, adapting to his intrusion with surprising efficiency. Then Grievous appeared. Lightsabers ignited. 4 of them, each blade humming with lethal energy. "So you're the Kryptonian the Jedi have allied with," Grievous rasped, his mechanical body unfolding to its full, intimidating height. "Count Dooku warned me about you. But you bleed, and anything that bleeds can be killed." The cyborg general attacked with inhuman speed, all 4 lightsabers creating a deadly web of plasma blades. Clark dodged rather than block, not because the sabers could hurt him, but because he wasn't sure if deflecting them would damage the weapons, and they clearly held significance to Grievous. "I don't want to fight you," Clark said, weaving between strikes that would have killed any normal being. "Call off the attack on the outpost. Let the people evacuate." "Mercy?" Grievous laughed, a horrible mechanical sound. "The Jedi showed my people no mercy when they transformed me into this machine. Why should I show mercy to them?" Clark caught one of Grievous's mechanical arms mid-strike, his grip crushing the durasteel like aluminum. The general howled in fury, striking with his 3 remaining sabers. Clark grabbed those arms too, one by one, until he held all 4 of Grievous's limbs immobilized. "Because mercy is what separates us from monsters," Clark said quietly. "I don't know what the Jedi did to you, but becoming a monster yourself doesn't fix it." For a moment, something almost like doubt flickered in Grievous's mechanical eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by rage. "You understand nothing, alien. This galaxy runs on power. The strong survive. The weak perish. And you're an anomaly that doesn't belong here." Grievous triggered an electromagnetic pulse built into his chest plate. The blast was designed to disable droids and electronics. It did nothing to Clark except make his comm earpiece crackle with static. "Interesting try," Clark said, then simply ripped Grievous's mechanical arms off at their joints. The general collapsed, suddenly limbless. His organic torso suspended in its cybernetic cradle like a grotesque puppet with cut strings. You destroyed..." Grievous gasped, more shocked than hurt. "Your arms are machines. They can be rebuilt." Clark looked at the view screen showing the battle outside. Republic and Separatist forces were still clashing, people dying while generals played war games. "But lives can't be rebuilt. Call off your forces, now." "Never," Grievous spat. Clark sighed, then used his heat vision to disable the ship's main reactor with surgical precision. The subjugator's lights flickered and died, emergency power kicking in. Without main power, the ion cannons couldn't fire, the ship couldn't maneuver, and it was effectively neutralized. "Your flagship is disabled," Clark said to Grievous. "Your droids are scrap. You're beaten. Please, end this." But Grievous only laughed that horrible mechanical laugh. "You think this changes anything? There are 1,000 ships like this one. 1,000,000 droids ready to fight. You're one being Kryptonian. You can't be everywhere." The words hit harder than any weapon because they were true. Clark flew back toward the hull breach he'd created, but Grievous's words echoed in his mind. He couldn't be everywhere. He couldn't save everyone. The fundamental limitation he'd struggled with on Earth applied here too. He was one man in a galaxy at war. Outside, he found Anakin's fighter engaged with vulture droids. Clark swept through the enemy fighters like an avenging angel, clearing the sky around his new ally. Below, on Ryloth's surface, he could see the outpost, and the Republic defenders fighting desperately against encroaching Separatist ground forces. "Anakin, I've disabled Grievous's flagship. Can you coordinate the evacuation?" "Already on it," Anakin replied, relief evident in his voice. "Republic frigates are moving into position, but Superman, look at the Eastern Valley. There's a civilian village under attack. Thousands of Twi'leks." Clark's enhanced vision confirmed it. Battle droids were advancing on a settlement, and the civilians were fleeing in panic. He could save the outpost or the village. Not both, not in time. "Go," Anakin said, reading his hesitation. "I'll handle the outpost. Save the civilians." Clark dove toward the Twi'lek village like a comet, the air screaming around him as he broke the sound barrier. Below, battle droids advanced in precise formations, their weapons cutting down fleeing civilians without mercy. Women, children, elderly. The droids made no distinction. Superman hit the ground between the civilians and the droids with such force that the shockwave knocked the mechanical soldiers off their feet. Before they could recover, Clark was among them, moving faster than their optical sensors could track. He dismantled the droids with controlled fury, each strike precise enough to destroy without creating shrapnel that might harm the civilians he was protecting. In 30 seconds, 200 battle droids lay in ruins. The Twi'lek civilians stared at him in stunned silence. An elderly male stepped forward tentatively, his leg twitching with nervous energy. You saved us. Who are you?" "Someone who helps," Clark said, offering what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Is anyone hurt?" "Several wounded. None dead thanks to you." The elder's eyes filled with tears. "Stranger, we've prayed to the gods for deliverance. Are you—" "I'm not a god," Clark interrupted gently. "Just someone with abilities who chooses to use them to protect people. Are there more villages in danger?" "3 more to the south. The metal soldiers have been raiding for weeks, taking our people as slaves for their factories." Rage burned cold in Clark's chest. Slavery. Of course there was slavery in this galaxy. Where there was war, there was always someone willing to profit from suffering. "I'll stop them. Get your people to shelter. Republic forces will be here soon to evacuate you." He flew south, following the elder's directions, and found the other villages under similar assault. At each one, he repeated the pattern. Arrive, disable the droids, protect the civilians, move on. By the time he'd secured all 4 villages, his Kryptonian cells were thrumming with solar energy, the 2 suns of Ryloth's system providing more power than Coruscant's single star. But as he returned to check on the military outpost, his super hearing picked up something that made his blood run cold. A transmission, encrypted but not hidden from his enhanced senses. Count Dooku's cultured voice speaking to someone in shadowed conference. The Kryptonian is predictable. He'll always choose to save civilians over strategic targets. Use that. Position forces near population centers. Make him spread himself thin. And prepare the weapon, the improved Kyber array. When he exhausts himself saving everyone, we strike. Clark's jaw tightened. They were going to use his heroism against him, turn his need to save people into a trap. And the worst part was, it would work. He couldn't ignore civilians in danger, even knowing it was a trap. He landed near the Republic outpost where Anakin was coordinating the evacuation. Clone troopers moved with practiced efficiency, loading wounded soldiers and critical equipment onto transport ships. The young Jedi spotted Superman and jogged over, his face lined with fatigue. "The villages?" Anakin asked. "Secured. No civilian casualties." Clark paused, debating whether to share what he'd overheard. "Anakin, the Separatists are planning something. They're going to use civilian populations as bait, spread their forces across multiple targets to divide my attention." "Classic siege tactics," Anakin said grimly. "Force the defender to split their forces, then overwhelm them piecemeal. But you're not a normal defender. You can be in multiple places quickly. Not quickly enough if they time their attacks right. And they're developing a weapon specifically designed to hurt me." Anakin studied him with surprising insight. "You're not invincible. You just make it look easy. But fighting like this, constantly moving, constantly saving, it exhausts you." "I'll manage," Clark said, though he couldn't quite keep the weariness from his voice. The twin suns were recharging him, but even Kryptonian cells had limits. "The people matter more than my comfort." "That kind of thinking gets Jedi killed," Anakin said bluntly. "Trust me, I've lost friends who pushed themselves too hard, refused to retreat when they should have. You can't save everyone if you burn yourself out. I have to try." "Why?" Anakin's question was genuinely curious, not challenging. You're not from this galaxy. This isn't your war. You could leave right now, search for a way home, and no one could blame you. Clark looked out at the wounded clones being loaded onto transports. Young men, all of them, bred for war and dying for causes they barely understood. Because if I don't help when I can, what's the point of having power? My father, my Earth father, taught me that the measure of a man isn't what he can do, but what he chooses to do. And I choose to help. Anakin was quiet for a long moment. Your father sounds wise. Mine was a slave who died before I could know him. The Jedi are the closest thing I have to family now. And sometimes I'm not sure they understand what family means. Before Clark could respond, alarms blared across the outpost. A clone commander rushed toward them, helmet under his arm, his face a perfect duplicate of every other clone, yet somehow individual in its expression of concern. General Skywalker, we're detecting massive energy readings in orbit. It's a new separatist vessel, Providence class, but heavily modified. And sir, it's charging a weapon unlike anything in our database. Clark's X-ray vision pierced the sky, and he saw it. A massive ship descending from high orbit. Its forward section dominated by a crystalline array that hummed with energy he could feel even from this distance. Kyber crystals, hundreds of them, all aligned to channel force energy into a focused beam. The improved weapon, Clark said quietly. They're not waiting for me to exhaust myself. They're coming now. Can you stop it? Anakin asked, his hand already on his lightsaber. Clark felt the twin sun's energy flowing through him, his cells approaching full capacity after the extended exposure to dual stellar radiation. I can try. Get these people off-world. If I can't stop that weapon, there won't be anything left to evacuate. Superman, wait! But Clark was already flying, accelerating toward the descending vessel with everything he had. The Kyber array tracked his approach, and he knew with grim certainty that he was flying into exactly the trap Count Dooku had prepared. Behind him, Anakin watched the Kryptonian become a speck against the sky, then turned to the clone commander. Get everyone loaded now, and send a priority transmission to the Jedi Council. Tell them Superman is engaging a separatist superweapon alone. He's going to need backup. Sir, by the time reinforcements arrive. I know, Anakin said grimly, igniting his lightsaber. Which is why I'm going up there too. Scramble every fighter we have. If that weapon fires, we make sure it only gets one shot. In orbit, Clark approached the Providence destroyer, his eyes fixed on the massive Kyber array that dominated the ship's bow. Through the crystalline matrix, he could see energy building. Not just electricity or plasma, but something else. Something alive. The Force itself, channeled and weaponized in ways the Jedi would never approve. A holographic transmission appeared in the space before him. Count Dooku's elegant features filled the projection, his expression one of polite curiosity. Superman of Krypton. I am Count Dooku of Sereno. I've heard remarkable things about you. Then you know I won't let you fire that weapon, Clark said, not slowing his approach. I'm counting on it. Dooku's smile was cold. The Jedi have grown arrogant, believing their force powers make them invincible. You've shown them there are beings beyond their understanding, but you too have grown arrogant. You believe your power makes you unstoppable. I believe people are worth protecting, even when it's hard. Noble. Foolish, but noble. Dooku gestured, and the Kyber array flared with blinding light. Let's test that nobility against reality. The weapon fired. The Kyber beam struck Superman with the force of a collapsing star. Where before the Kyber weapon had been painful, this concentrated array was agony. The force energy, channeled through hundreds of crystals, found every weakness in Kryptonian physiology and exploited it mercilessly. Clark screamed, his invulnerable body finally finding something that could hurt him. Truly hurt him. He felt himself falling, his flight faltering as the beam continued its relentless assault. Through the pain, his super hearing picked up Dooku's satisfied voice. Maintain fire. 30 seconds should be sufficient to incapacitate him. 30 seconds. Clark's mind raced through the agony. If he fell, if this weapon remained operational, it would be turned on the outpost below. On Anakin. On the clone troopers and Twi'lek civilians. On everyone who'd trusted him to protect them. He thought of his father, Jonathan Kent, standing in a Kansas wheat field, teaching a young Clark about responsibility. It's not about what the world does to you, son. It's about what you do for the world, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Clark stopped falling. Through sheer force of will, he pushed against the beam, his arms raised to shield his face. Every cell in his body screamed in protest, but he'd endured pain before. Doomsday had killed him once. Darkseid had brought him to his knees. This weapon was terrible, but it wasn't the end. Impossible, he heard a tactical droid report. Target is resisting, energy output at maximum, but he's advancing. Increase power, Dooku commanded. Draw from the auxiliary reactors if necessary. The beam intensified, but Clark had found his rhythm now. The pain was constant, overwhelming, but he'd learned to function through it. Each meter he gained toward the ship was an act of pure determination. His cape burned away, the fabric unable to withstand the concentrated force energy. His suit scorched and tore. But his body, his Kryptonian cells, fed by twin suns and driven by unbreakable will, endured. 20 meters from the ship. 15. 10. All power to the weapon. Dooku's voice had lost its composure. He cannot... Clark reached the Kyber array and drove his fist into its crystalline heart. The matrix shattered, hundreds of Kyber crystals exploding in a cascade of force energy that washed over him like cleansing fire. The weapon's beam cut off instantly, and the resulting feedback surge ripped through the Providence destroyer's power systems. Inside the ship, Dooku watched his carefully constructed trap crumble. The Kryptonian hung in space before the ruined weapon array, cape gone, suit damaged, but very much alive and conscious. And in his eyes burned something that made even the Sith Lord hesitate. Not rage, but absolute determination. You wanted to test me. Clark's voice came through the ship's external speakers, rough with pain, but unwavering. Consider the test concluded. Stand down, Count Dooku. This doesn't have to continue. For a moment, Dooku actually considered it. This being had endured a weapon that should have killed him, destroyed it through sheer physical force, and still offered mercy. But then he remembered his master's plans, the grand design that required the war to continue, and shook his head. I'm afraid it does continue, Superman. This weapon was merely a prototype. We'll build others, stronger ones, and eventually we'll find the frequency that kills you. Dooku's hologram bowed slightly. You're a remarkable being. I almost regret what must happen. But you've chosen the wrong side. The Providence destroyer's engines flared, preparing to jump to hyperspace. Dooku was retreating but not surrendering. Clark could chase him, could tear the ship apart, and drag the Sith Lord to the Jedi for justice. But below, on Ryloth's surface, were thousands of people who still needed protecting. And disabled as this destroyer was, it posed no immediate threat. He let Dooku go. By the time Clark descended back to the outpost, the evacuation was nearly complete. Anakin stood waiting, his fighter still grounded, his expression torn between awe and concern. The young Jedi rushed forward as Superman landed, his movements stiff with pain. You're hurt, Anakin said, noting the scorched suit and the exhaustion in Clark's eyes. I'll heal, Clark replied, and it was true. Already he could feel the twin suns' energy beginning to repair the damage. Kryptonian cells were remarkably resilient. The weapons destroyed. Dooku escaped, but he won't threaten this system again soon. You should have let me help, Anakin said, frustration evident. You didn't have to take that hit alone. Yes, I did. That weapon was designed specifically to hurt me. It would have killed anyone else instantly. Clark looked at the last transport lifting off, carrying wounded clones and rescued Twi'leks to safety. Everyone got out. That's what matters. Everyone got out because you nearly got yourself killed, Anakin countered. Superman, I've seen Jedi die because they thought they were invincible. You're not invincible. You just pretend to be. Clark couldn't help but smile despite the pain. Sounds like something a friend of mine would say. A very fast, very annoying friend, who never knows when to stop talking. Well, your friend sounds smart. Anakin's expression softened. Come on. Let's get back to Coruscant. The Council will want a full report, and you need to recover properly. The hyperspace journey back was quiet. Clark spent it absorbing solar radiation from the ship's viewports, his cells gradually healing. But his mind was troubled. Dooku's words echoed. You've chosen the wrong side. Had he? The Republic used clone soldiers. Beings created solely for warfare. The Jedi, for all their wisdom, had become generals in a war that seemed to have no clear moral foundation. And Superman, who'd always stood for truth and justice, found himself wondering what truth and justice meant in a galaxy far more complex than his own. When they arrived at the Jedi Temple, the entire council was waiting. Master Yoda, Master Windu, Obi-Wan and the others stood in the landing bay, their expressions grave. Report received, we did, Yoda said as Clark disembarked. Faced a weapon designed to kill you, and survived. Impressive, most impressive. But concerning, Mace Windu added, studying Clark's damaged suit. If the Separatists can hurt you, they will refine that capability. You won't be invulnerable forever. I was never invulnerable, Clark said quietly. Just durable. There's a difference. Indeed. Obi-Wan stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. Superman, you've proven yourself a formidable ally. You saved thousands of lives today. Republic soldiers, Jedi, and Twi'lek civilians. The Order is in your debt. I don't want debt. I want to understand what I'm fighting for. Clark looked around at the assembled Jedi Masters. This war, I've seen wars before, but this one feels different. Wrong somehow. Both sides claim to fight for freedom, for justice, but all I see is death and suffering. War is never just, Shakti said softly. But sometimes it is necessary. The Separatists would tear apart a 1,000-year-old republic, plunge entire systems into chaos. And the Republic uses slave soldiers to maintain order, Clark countered. I'm not judging. I know you're doing your best in an impossible situation. But I need to know. What happens when this war ends? What happens to the clones? To the Jedi who've become warriors instead of peacekeepers? The council chamber fell silent. It was Yoda who finally spoke, his ancient voice heavy with sorrow. Questions we have asked ourselves, young Superman. Lost our way. Perhaps the Jedi have. But retreat now. We cannot. Too many depend on us. Too much at stake. Then let me carry some of that weight, Clark said. I can be the warrior so you don't have to be. I can face the weapons, break the sieges, protect the people while you work toward actual peace. But I need your wisdom, your understanding of this galaxy. Together, maybe we can end this war the right way. Mace Windu regarded Superman for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. The Jedi Order formally accepts you as an ally, Clark Kent of Krypton. You'll work with us, but you won't be bound by our restrictions. You'll be free to act according to your conscience. With one condition, Obi-Wan added. You train with us. Learn about this galaxy, its history, its peoples. Power without understanding is dangerous, especially, when wielded with good intentions. Agreed, Clark said immediately. I have a lot to learn. As do we, Yoda said, a small smile crossing his ancient features. Much to teach us about heroism. You do. About choosing right over easy. Forgotten that lesson we had. Over the following days, Superman became a fixture at the Jedi Temple. He trained with the Knights, learning about galactic history, politics, and the myriad species that called the Republic home. He flew missions with Anakin, developing a genuine friendship with the young Jedi. He saved lives across dozens of worlds, always careful to minimize destruction, always offering enemies a chance to surrender. But he also asked difficult questions. He challenged the Jedi's reliance on clone soldiers, pushed them to remember their peacekeeping mandate, and forced them to confront the moral compromises they'd made in the name of necessity. Not all of his questions were welcomed, but they were needed. And in the shadows, Darth Sidious watched. The Sith Lord's carefully orchestrated plan had been disrupted by this Kryptonian anomaly. Order 66, the destruction of the Jedi, would need to be adjusted. But Sidious was patient. Every being had weaknesses. even gods could fall. The real war was just beginning. The Battle of Ryloth marked a turning point in the Clone Wars, though few understood it at the time. Superman's presence in the galaxy had done more than save lives. It had reminded the Jedi of who they were supposed to be. Master Yoda began advocating for diplomatic solutions where before there had been only military responses. Master Windu questioned orders from the Chancellor that seemed designed to prolong conflict rather than end it. And throughout the temple, Jedi Knights whispered about the Guardian from the sky who fought without hatred, who protected without prejudice, who proved that power and compassion could coexist. But the Separatists adapted too. Count Dooku's research into anti-Kryptonian weapons continued, and the Sith Lord's conversations with his master grew longer, more urgent. Superman was a variable that didn't fit the grand design, a piece on the board that moved according to its own rules. Clark stood on the temple's highest balcony, watching Coruscant's endless city lights. He still didn't know how to get home, or even if he wanted to. His Earth needed him, but so did this galaxy. And perhaps, in protecting this strange new world, he could learn something about himself. About what it meant to be a hero when the lines between right and wrong blurred into impossible shades of gray. Behind him, Anakin approached, a familiar presence now. Thinking about home? Thinking about choice, Clark replied. I chose to protect the temple. That choice led me here, to this moment. And now I have to keep choosing. Every day, every battle, every life. That's what being a Jedi is, Anakin said. Or what it should be. You've reminded us of that. Clark smiled. Then maybe I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. In the distance, a Star Destroyer lifted from the naval yards, carrying clone troopers toward another battle on another world. The war continued, relentless and hungry. But now, flying alongside the Republic's forces, was a symbol of something the galaxy had nearly forgotten. A hero who fought not for victory, but for the simple, profound belief that every life was worth saving. The Force might not touch Superman, but his presence had touched the Force itself, rippling through its currents with the promise that even in darkness, hope could endure. And somewhere in the galaxy's shadows, both Jedi and Sith were learning a truth that would reshape everything. Some Guardians don't ask permission to protect. They simply act, with absolute conviction and unbreakable will. And when such a Guardian stands at the temple's gates, even the darkness must think twice before approaching. May the Force be with you. More stories await.